With the CDC's eviction moratorium now over, the White House is calling for state and local government to impose their own eviction moratoriums. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over the White House's response to the end of the CDC's eviction moratorium. As those who probably watch any news network or watch any YouTube channel that has to do with real estate know, the Supreme Court struck down the CDC's eviction moratorium on Thursday, and basically landlords are finally able to get rid of these non-paying tenants. But of course, the White House is trying to get the state and local governments to impose their own eviction moratoriums. But before I get into that article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of this White House asking these local governments to impose their own eviction moratoriums. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. It's completely out of line, and the Supreme Court should strike them all down, in my opinion. So, this article, it comes from usatoday.com, and it says, White House calls for state, local eviction moratoriums after Supreme Court ruling. The White House called for urgent help Friday from governors and mayors to help struggling renters, encouraging officials to issue their own state and local eviction moratoriums after a Supreme Court ruling blocked the president's targeted federal freeze. Our bottom line is this, top Biden officials said in a co-written letter to local and state governments. No one should be evicted before they have the chance to apply for rental assistance, and no eviction should move forward until that application has been processed. That's a bunch of crap, okay? No one should be evicted until they apply for... imagine if you had tons of tenants who are applying who aren't qualified, who face no hardship during the coronavirus, have no reason not to have paid their landlord. They just don't want to pay rent anymore. And now the landlord has to wait for weeks or months on end until these local governments get their act together just to get a denial letter. What a joke, okay? You're taking away people's property without just compensation. That's a constitutional violation. And now you're trying to push this on to the state and local governments because you tried to pass something illegally through the federal government and you got smacked in the butt by the Supreme Court. Give me a break. 6 states and the District of Columbia currently have moratoriums on evictions amid the COVID-19 pandemic. We are encouraging all other states and local governments to use their legal authorities to appropriately put in place or extend their own eviction moratoriums, reads the letter co-signed by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, and Attorney General Merrick Garland. Well, I have a big problem with that, okay? Basically, they're sitting here and they are trying to encourage unconstitutional, unlawful orders from local and local and state governments, okay? And for these states that still have eviction moratoriums in place, they could very well be struck down by the Supreme Court as well. Okay, I know for a fact that I've done articles on the state of New York and the state of Illinois, and I know they still have their state level eviction protections in place. So, I want to see all of them just shut down. The District of Columbia has theirs in place as well, and they went far beyond the protections of most of the federal CDC eviction moratorium. And some of those places, they're just completely shutting down the eviction courts. So even people who shouldn't be protected from eviction because they're not suffering, they would have somewhere to move to, they have plenty of money, etc., they can't be evicted. So how is that fair to landlords? It's just not. And they just can't get this through their skulls, okay? They need to get it through their brains that these eviction moratoriums are not legal and they need to end. And I thought the Supreme Court decision would prove that. But you know what? These other state moratoriums need to just end as well, okay? And them trying to encourage more states and more localities to participate, if I was in state government right now, I would be like, no, you know what? Because we could face, lawsuits, etc., that will cost us millions of dollars if we put our own moratorium in place, knowing that it is unlawful and unconstitutional. In a 6-3 opinion ruling led by conservative justices, the Supreme Court said Thursday the Center for Disease Control and Prevention did not have the authority to impose the freeze and that only Congress can take such action. The ruling allowed property owners to begin the process of evicting millions of Americans who are behind on rent because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Biden administration noted the spread of the Delta variant has increased the number of COVID-19 cases and said many Americans are just now recovering from the economic downturn. Millions remain at risk, the letter says. With lives on the line, it is imperative that we act at all levels of government. Completely ignores the constitutional arguments, okay? Completely ignores the fact that, there are landlords suffering financial consequences of all of this. Completely ignores the fact that these rental assistance programs just are not working in a huge percentage of the cases. Okay, so from what I last read, they've only distributed about 5% of the money that they assigned for the rental assistance programs. Only 5% has been directed and the landlords have only gotten 5% of it. Okay, so if that's the case, then rental assistance programs aren't working. They allocated that $46 billion. They allocated that months and months and months ago, and they still don't have it to those who need it. So, rental assistance programs don't work. The eviction moratoriums themselves are unlawful, and they're sitting here telling the state and local governments to do what they couldn't do because it was unlawful. One of 6 renters is estimated to be behind on their rent, according to the U.S. Census Bureau's Household Pulse survey. Biden issued the eviction moratorium, which applied to areas with the highest shares of COVID-19 cases, and was set to expire October 3rd after a nationwide moratorium ended August 31st. Biden had asked, or I think they meant July 31st. Biden had asked Congress to extend the moratorium, but Democrats lacked enough votes and never acted, leading the Biden administration to take action unilaterally. And their action that they did take was unlawful, and it went against what the Supreme Court said in their prior ruling, and this is exactly what they should have expected to happen, okay? They got the whole new eviction moratorium completely thrown out, and now, at least in a large part of the country, landlords are going to finally be able to evict these tenants who haven't paid rent in quite a bit of time. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Friday that Biden would support another eviction moratorium from Congress, but expressed skepticism that would happen. She said there are other ways to keep families in their homes. She pointed to efforts to get emergency rental assistance program funds to landlords and renters faster, as well as the push for local eviction freezes. If there were enough votes to pass an eviction moratorium in Congress, it would have happened, Psaki said. It hasn't happened, right? So what we're looking at now is how to achieve the objective that we all share. No, we don't all share that objective. You think that everyone shares the objective of people losing their property rights? What are you, smoking dope? That's ridiculous. I mean, come on here. We're talking about basically they should have never had the rental assistance programs and the eviction moratorium all part of the same package. That is completely ridiculous. If they wanted to keep tenants in their properties or keep tenants in their homes, who were struggling paying their rent during the eviction or during the pandemic, they should have just provided the rental assistance. They should have never had an eviction moratorium, because if they were paying the landlords the rent for the tenants, then that means that the landlords would not have a reason to evict the tenant, except in those cases where they needed to evict the tenant. So a lot of landlords, they got basically wrapped up in this whole mess, and right now, they're finally going to be able to get these bad tenants out of their properties. And I'm glad, okay? I don't care what the White House says. I hope that these local and state governments, they don't impose any more eviction moratoriums throughout the country. I'm sure there might be a couple coming from some liberal states, and, I'm sure that some of the ones that in the few states that have their own state moratoriums right now, I'm sure they'll try to extend them more, but, for the rest of the country, at least, that this chapter of the story is over.